Welcome to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 356. My name is John Morgan. Cold Coffee is not with me right now, and Cold Coffee is about to get a cold talking to. Cold Coffee is out in Anaheim, California for UFC 270. I can't blame him there. Obviously, he's our lead videographer. He's the guy that we send out to. He's got the nicer equipment. He's the better shooter. I mean, you guys know when I'm doing video, it doesn't look that great for MMA Junkie. So he went out there. He's the head videographer. So he's going out there handling that. I don't fault him for that. Now, you may say, well, John, why aren't you out there? Well, Matt Wells is actually out there. Kind of interesting. It's kind of funny when you work in the internet. You work on internet-based businesses. Simon Simano and Matt Wells have never actually met face-to-face. Obviously, when Matt was brought on, all those interviews and stuff were done virtually, and so they haven't actually met face-to-face. And since Simon Simano is based in the SoCal area, it's an opportunity to bring Matt out to Anaheim so they could have a little, get together, get to chat a little bit. You work with somebody, you want to have a little time, do a little face-to-face conversation. The Zoom calls and the Skype meetings are all right, but nothing as good as face-to-face. So he's out there. And Mike Bond, obviously living up in Toronto, but his dad lives in Southern California as well. So anytime there's a SoCal event and he can get out there to go see family, clearly understandable. I'd be a little frustrated if there was an event in Dallas and I wasn't able to go home and see my parents. You know what I mean? You get a chance to go see your family on the company's dime, right? Kind of work together that family obligation along with the business obligation. So that leaves me home in Las Vegas, which I certainly will not complain about. I am comfortable working here in my office, and just means tonight I get to take my kid to jiu-jitsu practice. It's been a long time since I've taken the kid to jiu-jitsu, man. Between me having COVID and then him having COVID, and then it's just been a while. So, yeah, we're gonna go do that tonight. So no complaints about any of that. Here's where Cold Coffee gets his cold talking to. He hits me up yesterday and says, "Oh, by the way, I didn't bring the equipment that I need to record a segment for the podcast." So here we are, the MMA Roadshow, and who is on the road? Cold Coffee's on the road. But Cold Coffee did not bring the gear to record a segment for the podcast. Can we all agree to boo this man right now? Boo! So yeah, Interesting choice there. Didn't bring anything to record the podcast. So that leaves you with me. But I know you didn't want to hear me just chilling for an hour talking about this. Obviously, we're talking about UFC 270 this week, the first pay-per-view of the year. Big one, 2 title fights. Understandably, maybe some people saying the depth of the card isn't there, and I completely get that. There's some fights that I do care about. But, we're really about these top 2, right? Francis Ngannou, Cyril Gane, the heavyweight unification bout. Brandon Moreno, Davidson Figueretto, the flyweight trilogy bout as well. A couple of really good fights there. Really excited about these fights. Not only, of course, title fights, so they're meaningful, but I think they have the combination in both of these of both stylistically being impressive matchups and having some storyline behind them as well. So everything that I think you could want in a fight, these 2 fights have. And then, of course, if you want to question the depth outside of it, I get that. But we'll talk about some of the ones that I'm most looking forward to. Been checking out media day to day and watching all those interviews play out. And obviously just some matchups on paper that look good as well. But I knew you didn't want to hear me just sit here and talk for an hour, right? I mean, just one dude rambling on. That doesn't sound very fun. I mean, even if it is, a rather knowledgeable and enthusiastic guy like myself, you know what I'm saying? So what it did was got with our good friends Gorgeous George and Goze, the MMA Junkie Radio crew, of course, and they do a Patreon as well with Richard Hunter, another good friend of mine, former radio guy out in the Dallas area. Is how I first got to know him, and then he, like me, moved out to Las Vegas. Doesn't cover MMA full-time, but has been a part of MMA media for quite some time. So they do a show in addition to MMA Junkie Radio. They do the Triple G show, the Gorgeous George and Goze show, that's on Patreon. So if you want to support those guys, patreon.com/Triple G show. And would highly encourage everybody to go over there and check out their additional content in addition to the MMA Junkie Radio stuff. But, I used to do MMA Junkie Radio with those guys a lot. And then schedules changed, responsibilities changed, and things moved on. Next thing you know, I haven't done their show in years. And I don't know, we got together and had a couple frosty beverages the other night. We're talking, we got to do some more stuff. We got to do some more stuff together. We're right here in Las Vegas. We all live here together. We got to get together and do some more stuff. And so this seemed like the perfect opportunity. With cold coffee out, with you not wanting to hear me just ramble on and preview a card for an hour, we say, you know what? Why don't I get together with those guys? And they were kind enough that even though this is part of their subscription content over there at patreon.com/the Triple G Show. Now, if you want to see video, you got to go to patreon.com/Triple G Show. Now, you can also go to patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow. This is a collaboration, but we're plugging them right now. I know I should plug myself too. Patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow as well too. But patreon.com/Triple G Show. You can see a video version of it, but we'll give you an audio version, a little taste, a little preview of what goes on over the Triple G Show as we sit down to break down the featured fights of UFC 270 and talk about some of the latest headlines. So here's a little taste of that.
All right, we're going to suspend the drumbeat here and just get going. It's the MMA Avengers show, and what's different about this than a normal Triple G show is we're joined by another Patreon provider, entertainer. His name is John Morgan. He's our colleague over at MMA Junkie, a former Journalist of the Year. What's going on, J-Mo?
I'm good, man. Good to see you guys in the production values. I mean, look at that right off the top, man. You got to step in your game up.
Jeez. All right. The one day that we have company coming over and I look like I'm broadcasting from the prison rec yard. It's funny. By the way, a Patreon provider entertainer makes it sound like John's a cam model or something. Like he's going to plug his OnlyFans. I just moved outside because it was nice outside. So I don't know. It is funny, though, how everybody pays attention to their backgrounds now. Like you look at those very closely on CNN and, all those people broadcasting from home, the books, everybody's trying to one up each other with the level of their reading. I've noticed the latest thing is like an acoustic guitar somewhere in the background. Let people know you've got some diversity. Yeah.
Hey, Richard, if we zoom out, are you on a milk crate and do you have a racquetball that you're throwing off of another wall?
No, but I get 2 hours a week out here, so we're on a little bit of a time limit. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was the only time they let me out of solitary.
Guys, I wanted to dive into the fights that are happening this weekend. We got, 2 title fights. You got Francis Ngannou, who's going to be unifying his undisputed title against Ciryl Gane's interim title. And what's standing out to me is Ciryl Gane's odds keep slowly creeping up. He's up to about -150 now, with Francis Ngannou coming back at +120. And all I've heard for the last couple of weeks is, Ngannou's pay, Ngannou's contract, but I haven't heard as much discussion about the fight itself, and I was hoping we could do a little bit of that. Now, it's as easy as, of course, Ngannou's got the power. He can end it super fast, which is kind of what he's done in his previous 5 fights. He's on an incredible roll, if you think about it, versus Ciryl Gane, who seems to have like the size and the imposing figure of, to match Ngannou, except he seems to be a little bit more of like surgical in his approach. Of course, he's got power. You wouldn't want to get hit by him either, but he wants to kind of like chop you down slowly but surely. So I wanted to kind of, jump into that with you guys a little bit. We'll start off with John. John, we haven't heard from you in a while, but this fight, man, how do you see it playing out? Like, is it going to be like the tale of 2 fights usually? What you're kind of envisioning happening early versus how what can unfold in the later rounds?
No, man, I'm super intrigued by this fight, to be honest with you. I mean, the story and all that, that's great, too. I mean, we always like that when we're promoting, shows and fights are coming up, all the backstory, the former training partners. I mean, that's all cool, but exactly what you laid out, the tactics of what's going to happen in the cage is why I'm really so excited about this. And I'll just tip my hand, man. Our staff picks, I went ahead and I went with Ciryl Gane here. And I think he has the movement, the ability, the speed, the finesse to be able to avoid some of that wild power from Francis Ngannou. The problem is in making a Cyril Gane pick is that if Francis Ngannou does land, I mean, he literally can knock out anybody in the entire division, and that can happen here too. So it's like Francis Ngannou has this otherworldly power that can just like completely negate any game plan. I mean, it can be a situation, a la Derek Lewis as well, where you can beat the guy for 24 minutes and 50 seconds and still end up losing the fight. Although, of course, we think of Francis Ngannou as more dangerous early. So, listen, I'm intrigued by this fight a lot. I think that Cyril Gane has done a great job of not really buying into the rivalry, so to speak. I don't think he's going in there with any kind of temper or feeling like he's got to prove something. And I just think, man, he's so slick and tactical on the feet, man. I think he's got everything it takes to win this fight. So I'm taking Cyril Gane, but what makes it so intriguing is if Francis Ngannou lands those crazy haymakers, you're going out. So phenomenal fight. I am really honestly surprised to see the way the line has moved. Obviously, Ngannou started as the favorite. As you touched on it, Cyril has kind of supplanted him there. I wonder if it'll flip back the other way on fight night as you start to get more and more casual money coming in that maybe doesn't really know Cyril so much but knows Francis. But I'm super intrigued by this main event.
All right, Richard, how about you? Are you buying into Cyril Gane maybe just having more of an advantage because he does seem more relaxed? He's not carrying stress or drama like Ngannou is, and he'll just be able to execute his game plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's two things that make this fight hard to predict. One, it's always difficult when you've got somebody coming into a main event fight, especially a title fight, and there's just not a lot. There's not anything to go on in terms of when they lose, how do they lose, right? Because eventually, pretty much everybody's going to lose. But if you haven't seen it, you don't know what it looks like. So sometimes those types of fighters can, I think, I don't want to call it overhyped, but just because there's all evidence to one side and nothing to really go on to the contrary, it's very difficult to predict. And sometimes those guys can benefit, I think, from a little bit of overheightened expectations, perhaps. The other side of it is, and this is another weird twist to this, Francis Ngannou is arguably in the rare position of being able to say, hey, if I lose this, there's a real upside, which is you're out of your contract, okay? And I think he could, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about, like, normally so many fighters, they want to chase that boxing, showcase money and all that kind of stuff that's such a cottage industry now. And a lot of times it's Dana. Will you co-promote? Will you let Conor do this? Will you co-promote with Mayweather? I mean, it has happened, but that takes all that right out of the equation. He could lose, he could get out of his contract, he could go make all that big money, they'd come right back. No, win or lose, he'd come right back. I mean, it is a rare situation for him to be in, and you can't help if you're Francis Ngannou or anybody else from sitting there going, man, there is a real financial upside to me coming out on the losing end Saturday night. So I'm not saying that's plan A, but it has to have occurred to him, and I know his agent knows it. So I think those two things combined do make for a tempting scenario to pick Cyril Gane, because here's another thing with the big powerhouse puncher like Francis Ngannou versus a technician. Okay, either Gane is going to be able to keep him Ngannou at bay, or he's not, and you see that pretty quickly. These are also the kind of fights, too, where if you get a round to look at it, especially 2 rounds, and you can kind of see, okay, he's having a hard time, Ngannou is, penetrating the perimeter, then this could play out this way over 5 rounds. So I think there's a lot of reasons there to pick Gane. But if Ngannou is going to prove us wrong, I think he either does it pretty damn quickly or not at all. Add all those things up, and I'll go ahead and take Gane here, but it's not a pick I'm particularly comfortable with because of those bizarre X factors.
All right, Goze, how about you? Give us a little bit of a breakdown, and of course, the pick that you're leaning towards right now, because this fight is so close that I wouldn't blame anyone for having a completely different pick on Saturday.
Well, I think first and foremost, the most important thing when this matchup was announced was where it's going to be, right? Big cage versus small cage. Big cage gives Cyril Gane a lot of real estate to do what he does best. If you look at Francis Ngannou, I mean, he doesn't have the body type that tells you I'm going 5 rounds. I'm going to outpoint this guy. That's just not in the cards, guys. So really, round 1, maybe round 2. If he doesn't catch him by then, it's going to be a long night for Francis Ngannou, because I think Ciryl Gane can stay out of trouble. He's a smart fighter. He's got a good fight IQ, stick and move. But the thing is, you know, if you look at Extreme Couture, you look at Eric Nixick, you know, Francis Ngannou, they know exactly what this guy's going to try and do. And hopefully they figured out a way to mitigate that, you know, cut the cage and some footwork, really trap this guy and put him in bad situations. But the problem is he's going in there with one weapon. It's a big weapon, but it's only one. And I think Ciryl Gane's got quite a few, and he can mix them up. So it's a dangerous fight, but yeah, I'm kind of leaning Ciryl Gane.
Wow, I'm the only guy on Ngannou. I mean, I'm hearing you guys. Ciryl Gane is pretty amazing, and he keeps getting better and better. But, you know, against Jairzinho, I believe that's the one fight of the streak that he's on in the UFC that he didn't finish. Jairzinho is also tentative, too. If you're not engaging, it also makes it more difficult. He's not going to have that problem with Francis Ngannou. Richard made some good points there as far as the reach. You know, 6'5", 6'4", I think is both of these guys' respective heights. That's Ciryl Gane being like, it appears 1 inch taller. But Ngannou just has that freakish power to match the length and size. And I just feel like he's in play for at least 3 rounds. And I don't want to even think about, the cardio of the first Stipe fight. It seems like that's been addressed, even though, again, he makes quick work out of most of the fights. But I was pointing out to Goze, even after the Miocic fight, which, again, only, I think, ended in the first round, he still seemed pretty, like, calm. Like, there was still a lot of gas in that tank. You know, he exploded when he needed to, but, you know, he wasn't labored, I guess, in you know, when he was doing the post-fight speech or just his celebration. I don't know. I think that power really, really is just not underappreciated, because we all know it's there. It's just I think it's there in play a lot more that Ciryl Gane needs to worry about. You know what I mean? So it's a heavyweight fight at the end of the day. Both guys are pushing the weight limit. They're as big as you can get without being fat fucks. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally like they're both just well put together, man. And it's going to be an amazing fight. And it sucks that it's getting lost a little bit in the whole, you know, the drama of the last contract or whatever. I'm just wondering, to follow up on Richard's point, part of the appeal of fighting Tyson Fury has got to be baddest hombre on the planet. If you lose to Ciryl Gane, you're not even the baddest man in the promotion. So, not to say Fury wouldn't still fight him, and not to say Ngannou wouldn't still make a lot of money, but I feel like it loses a little bit of its luster. And I feel like that'll still be fuel for Ngannou. I think Ngannou feels like, hey, look, I need to put this guy away, still keep my dreams of fighting Fury for a lot of money somehow, and hopefully working it into my contract, which, again, I just don't think it's going to happen. But I just don't think he's also going to, like, not give his best effort. What happened before the Miocic fight the first time was he flew to Paris. He didn't seem like he was, you know, he didn't have the best camp, he wasn't in the best condition. And according to my sources, he's put in the work for this one. So if he loses, it's because he just lost to another skilled fighter, you know, that happened to come along right when he was starting his reign. But, all right, we'll circle one more time. Any thoughts on anybody? John, we'll go back to you again before we tackle the co-main event.
Yeah, no, I think Richard laid out really well with the contract talk, and I think you're right. Like, what you're saying is correct. If he loses, that Fury fight could completely go away, especially if he loses, if he gets knocked out some way. I mean, if he gets taken down and submitted, maybe you go, yeah, well, you know, that's that wrestling stuff, but, you know, look at me, because obviously he looks great on a poster. You said, now if I could go to what I really like to do is box, and I think you could still sell it. But the contract stuff that really concerns me is not so much that I think there's going to be any funny business going on where he's throwing the fight or maybe not worried about losing, but you just do wonder how much of a distraction has it been. I know, George, you're saying your sources told you he put in the work, but is he laser focused? Is he 100% all in on winning this fight and proving these things? Yeah, you're right. He wants to win, because I don't think he wants that Fury fight to go away. But, man, is this thing going to be a distraction to him? I just can't imagine it's not at least a little bit in his head on a daily basis, maybe on fight night as well. You know, in that one moment where he needs to be laser focused on the task at hand, is there even just a little bit that's kind of throwing him off the game a little bit? So I'm just interested to see how it all works out. I will say too, I think it's kind of a damn shame that a fight of this magnitude and of this quality, you're right, it seems like the storyline is really more about the contract than the unification of the heavyweight title, and what a great, you know, just a great fight it is. It's a damn shame that's kind of become the storyline.
Yeah. Richard, final thoughts on this fight before we move to the co-main?
No, I mean, agreed on, you know, the I guess the stock value of the hybrid showcase fight could go up or down depending on the outcome. John makes a good point about the submission. But I also think that in terms of marketing something like that, I think there would be a ton of people who would buy the Ngannou Fury fight who aren't even going to watch this. So you could just kind of tell them what happened, you know. I think the bigger concern, and no, I was definitely not thinking he would you know, he's not going to throw it or anything like that. But in terms of the value of it, I just think that you know, there's so much to be said for not having to have a partner in it like the UFC. I mean, this business of working into his contract that, you know, could I have the ability to go box? I'll bet that is an automatic hell no from the UFC. I couldn't see them agreeing to that in a million years. So, and you know, also with Ngannou, I mean, you're bringing up some past concerns. I think sometimes, you know, past can be prologue in terms of, not to say you're not focused for this fight, but if you were to say to a fighter who maybe had a little bit of a history with that, hey, just hypothetically, if you had a fight one day on the horizon and there were a lot of out of the cage issues going on to possibly distract you, could you be 100% certain that you would be 100% focused? And if they were being honest, the answer might be no. Because at that point, you're just kind of talking about human nature. So I think it's very interesting. You know, like you said, it is a shame that we're talking maybe more about that than the other side of it. But also, I also don't know exactly that any of us know exactly what kind of fight we're going to be getting. It might not be that exciting, guys. I mean, if Ngannou just keeps him on the perimeter for 5 rounds and wins a technical fight, you know, 50-45 or something like that, might not be all that exciting. We might end up getting more excited about a rematch than we are this one, depending on how these two styles match up.
All right, Goze, final thoughts?
I think an interesting storyline. I'd love to find out who the UFC wants to win. Because if Francis Ngannou wins, you got to pay him. That's going to sting. If he loses, now you got Ciryl Gane as your champion. I don't know that that's the most exciting option or the most sellable option going forward. So I'm kind of curious who they would really want to win this.
But doesn't he's going to have one more fight though if he wins, because of assuming there's a champions clause, right? So you're not going to have to pay him until the fight after that if you're going to keep him.
But I feel like Gane is the only guy that can take him out.
Okay, yeah. Well, John, do you know that the clarification on that whole if Ngannou wins, it's either 3 fights or a year, or was that what we thought it was and Ngannou said it wasn't? Or
yeah, he's saying that the new contract, the contract that he has right now, it would extend for 1 more fight, but there's a time period of a total of 5 years that would extend to at that point. So he feels like it's done. Listen, I don't know that it's that cut and dry. You know what I mean? It might be a little bit more of a legal battle. You know, we're kind of saying this is because that's what he said and that's what their team believes. But you know, the UFC's got a whole bunch of lawyers on the roster that are pretty high powered in enforcing those contracts. So I'm not 100% sure that, you know, that's exactly what's going to happen, that he would just have 1 more and leave. But it's what we believe to be the case, at least for now.
That's where they break out the high-powered magnifying glass and they go, let us direct your attention to the fine print not visible by the human eye.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Goze, I did want to chime in on one thing you said was the UFC, I'm sure, the one thing I've obviously figured out is they're never dealt a bad hand. That was the case years ago. Like, oh, fuck, Tito lost, you know, or Ben or Hughes maybe. What are we going to do? We got 3 more months before the next pay-per-view. There's no reality show. We're screwed. That's not like that no more, man. This is a machine that can make stars like that. And who knows, if Ciryl Gane has a beautiful KO, he may be that guy. But I'm just wondering if Ngannou has a beautiful KO, and the way the UFC seems to be selling those pay-per-views with ESPN behind them, could that even be like another step that he takes in superstardom, where now they're just forced to, meet inside of a meeting room and figure out a number and just go forward. The UFC will pay more than they thought they were going to, and maybe Ngannou isn't going to get as much as he was going to, but yet everyone wins. Because here's another thing. They've been saying this one for years, but now they're so close. There's got to be a big show in Africa that is also on the horizon. And I don't know. I just feel like that's not only Usman and Izzy, but two of the three, and I thought for sure one of them being Ngannou, was what would headline something huge in that continent. Not only for the purpose of the show itself, but think about all the talent that's going to come from a big show being there, all the young kids that are going to be motivated, to become athletes that maybe elect not to go towards the other sports. Because Africa produces athletes in soccer, NFL, I see them, NBA. Maybe only baseball is the one where I can really say, geez, I don't think I remember, seeing an African last name on a jersey or anything like that. But for the most part, I mean, it produces a lot of great athletes. So I think either way, the UFC does not lose. But someone winning emphatically, I think that's my lame prediction. Someone winning emphatically is really, really going to make a superstar of one of these two.
But George, I would say, as you said, the UFC never has a bad hand. The flip side is that if Cyril Gane wins, they still have yet to make their big France debut. It's finally legal there again. That's another new market for them. So when you talk about them being good, I like what Goze is saying is true. I don't know that, Cyril's quite the superstar, X factor, that sort of thing, but he is in France, and that would be a big thing in their growth over there. So yeah, I think they win either way.
Can I ask you guys a question though?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, everybody has a breaking point, and these pay-per-views going up in price. Before the pandemic, I loved going to the movies. I loved it. It's so much fun. But I actually had to put a limit on which ones I would actually go to see and which ones I would just wait till they come out on a streaming service, because it was just getting too damn expensive. This is not something you do in your leisure anymore, watch fights. This is like a bill. Every month you're going to have to shell out $70, right? And the time that it takes to sit there, the time away from your family, you're asking for 8 hours. Hey, leave me alone for 8 hours. Are we at that breaking point? And is this pay-per-view going to suffer because of that with the casual fan?
I think it has to a degree, right? I mean, that $75 price is pretty big. I always feel unqualified to speak on pay-per-view pricing and fans because I don't have to dig into my pocket. You know what I mean? I get to charge it off. So, yeah, I say 75 sounds expensive, but all I'm doing is putting it on a company credit card that somebody else is paying for. So I don't really know, but I would think that has to. Then the flip side of that, I look at it as if you're an MMA fan, this is your thing. You know what I mean? Like MMA fans, especially hardcores, I mean, they're gonna shell out for it. But you said among the casuals, I gotta think that price point is a little bit scary to somebody that's not a hardcore fan.
Well, yeah, and I
go ahead, Richard.
No, I was just gonna say too. I think I brought this up last week, but I also think another thing that complicates this is the 2 points process of getting into this pay-per-view, because you got to subscribe to ESPN Plus from the get-go. So and I'm not talking about existing people so much as I am bringing new people. I think that's all. Like, if you didn't really know how this whole process worked, and let's say this was going to be your first time, and they do need to be bringing new viewers all the time, I could see people going, wait a second, I subscribe to a service first for like $5-6, then I spend the 75. That's complicated too. So yeah, I think it does become an issue. Now ESPN, like Dana said the other day, look, that's ESPN's deal now because we've handed it off to them. And Disney doesn't seem to be in the business of losing money. I'm sure they've kind of figured this out and figured out that they'll be okay by doing this, and maybe anybody that drops off is going to be more than compensated for because of the additional revenue. But in terms of big picture, I think that's where I'm more concerned about it. Is this a turnoff to when you're trying to bring new fans to it? Imagine the kid that he just found out about UFC and he's excited about it. And he's going to try to talk mom and dad into ordering this thing. And they take one look at it and they're like, we already subscribe to enough streaming services. We're not going to subscribe to another one plus, what is it, $75? That's where I can see it becoming an issue.
They only lucked out because it's ESPN, honestly. You know, if it was like a CBS Sports, no disrespect to them, NBC Sports, you really have to think about it. But the fact that ESPN is just, you know, it really is a sports leader, and you get so much with it. That was a decision. That was something the UFC, I wish would have done a long time ago. I know that ESPN resisted it, but that's one thing I think they luck out on is the ESPN is just so powerful and they're behind them. Okay, I will say this though. Couple things. I just wish that if people only realized how bad we anticipated the collision of Cain Velazquez versus Junior Dos Santos. Remember when they were slowly coming up and we were like, we don't want them to fight because we want Brock to have opponents. But then eventually they did. And, you know, it was a quick fight the first time. Then the other ones were painful to watch because one guy, you know, was beating the shit out of the other one. And yet these two really are almost physically more imposing and explosive. Like, this is that fight on steroids, yet it doesn't have that same attention, unfortunately. Now, maybe by the time we close on Saturday night, we'll all change our opinion. But I think John was asking right now, you know, what's the breaking point or whatever. I'm a Niners fan, and they play Green Bay at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right as we start our watch along. More on that later. And I'm thinking, like, if there are a lot of hardcore fans that are just, you know, their friends are coming over for the game, and that might be a little bit of the competition that they run into, you know. And I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping a lot of people have adopted the whole man cave, you know, format, or at least a couple screens, and they can watch them both. But that might be the breaking point for someone that's having, you know, spending $100 on beers and food, and that's why they don't get the big fight. But lastly, I do want to say this: what I do hope is those people that in boxing spend a lot of money for Fury and Wilder, and they got themselves a great fight, you know, two of the top guys in boxing, and they delivered. I hope they take a risk on this one because I think this one has the potential to be just as formidable.
I didn't realize that there had been a man cave format established. We may need George to draw this up for us.
Well, the whole, you know, like I've promoted the 3 TVs and the living room deal, but now I'm just, you know, call them man caves or whatever. All right, the co-main event of Davidson Figueretto versus Brandon Mourinho. Boy, one thing that I loved out of just hearing the embedded so far, I'm only through 2. I don't know if a third one's dropped. Check out MMA Junkie if they have. But the fact that it really sounded confident that both of them don't even have to worry about their weight. I really want the best 2 here because this is the last time we're going to see them, in my opinion, unless, of course, Davidson wins because then it's 1-1-1. But I just hope the 4th fight is not for a while, and if it is, it's in either one of their home countries. But Figueretto, who, if he's on weight like he says he is, that's still a dangerous mofo, man. He was taking it to Mourinho in that first fight before that point deduction. And in the second fight, I felt like it was just a fat cat, you know, champion that made a lot of money and just didn't train, probably figured he owned him, and then he ran into the weight cut being a problem. And then he ran into a guy that went out and got better and stayed hungry and got his ass kicked. But I really am leaning a little bit towards – I'm trying to put my bias aside of the Mexican blood that runs through me. I just think Davidson's pretty cool, man. His ground game, his power, and if he really, really gave us an honest camp, oh, man, it pains me to say I'm leaning towards Figueretto. This time I'll go in reverse. Goze, how about you?
I'm sort of leaning towards Figueretto as well. It's hard to kind of get that out of your mind, what happened in that first fight. And you're right. Mentally, he seems like he's in a better place. I think he kind of learned a lesson. The X factor in all this is Brandon Mourinho seems to still be getting better with every fight. So who knows what jumps he's made in this last period between fights. But I said this on Spinning Back Click. That dude has a lot of people trying to get a hold of him. English and Spanish, interviews, moving them around from place to place. I think that's the type of thing that you can't really prepare for. You just have to experience and you'll learn your lesson from it. And he might be going through something like that right now. And TJ's not that far from Anaheim, so it actually looks very similar if you've been there. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him that night. And I think that all that put together, is enough for maybe Davidson Figueretto to win this fight.
Yeah. All right. Well, Richard, how about you? Are you with us or si se puede?
No, I am with you. This is, very rarely, because you just brought up, George, the possibility of even like a fourth fight down the line, and I hate to talk about that before we're done with the third. But we were talking a lot of boxing a minute ago. Boy, I mean, something that MMA hasn't really been around long enough to have enjoyed yet is that rare fourth fight, trilogy plus one that we saw with some of the great boxing matchups of all time. Speaking of great Mexican fighters, like Morales and Barrera maybe comes to mind. But that could be something that's very plausible for these guys. And you're right. This, to me, this is not a situation of, okay, one guy's going one way and one guy's going another. It's that both guys are still very formidable. And, Goze brings up a couple of very interesting X factors in terms of, once you're being positioned as that media star for the UFC, you either kind of get it or you don't, and you adapt to it or you don't. A pick. I mean, leaning toward Figueretto. Yeah. Okay. I guess I can do that too. But the main thing I think of going into this fight, this is the real intrigue fight for me of the card. Not that the main event isn't, but like I said, there is a possibility for that main event to be a little lackluster that I brought up, that I absolutely do not think is the case here. I don't see how this fight, to me, this is a can't miss in terms of action and potential fight of the night, and possibly setting up a rare fourth fight, regardless of who looks better.
And your lean is Figueretto then?
Yeah, sure.
All right, John, how about a little X's and O's and a prediction? And if you don't mind, you're real close to the pulse of the sport, man. This arguably could be Mourinho's toughest title defense, and he's getting it early. If he wins and the pandemic clears, how big of a star can this guy be in Mexico?
The guy's already becoming a huge star. I mean, you could see it. Obviously, he's just got the personality. I mean, how can you not love Brandon Moreno, man? He's just so enthusiastic. He's so genuine. He's such a, just a happy-go-lucky guy. Man, you see the emotions. I was going back and watching the countdown last night, and seeing him just tears of joy, crying at what he did. That amazing speech that he had years ago about, maybe not today, maybe not next month, but one day. I mean, just everything about the guy is star power. And it's not just Mexico, it's Mexican Americans too, you know what I mean? So the guy, his star power really is growing. But first of all, I will say, Richard, great points on the co-main event. I think this, for the hardcores especially, man, this is just as exciting, if not more exciting, than the main event, because you're right, the main event could very much be kind of a moderately paced tactical battle of being careful not to have those big car crashes in there. So this one is going to be car crashes. I mean, but I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm surprised. In my staff picks, I went with Davidson Figueretto as well, and I thought I was going to be a little bit of an outlier because of how good Brandon Moreno is getting. As you said, he continues to, it seems, to improve. But I think people are sleeping a little bit on just how good Davidson Figueretto is. I do think exactly what you said, George. That last one, He was walking around with a little too much swagger, if you ask me. I think he was more worried about being a star than he was about being that absolute killer, the God of War. You know what I mean? That nickname, I mean, from the very beginning of his UFC run, I thought it aptly described him. I mean, the dude has got insane power for a flyweight. He can submit you as well. He's incredibly aggressive. Now, listen, that aggressiveness, intimidation factor, that's going to be gone now for Brandon Moreno. Right now, you've beat the guy. Not only have you been in there, with several rounds of them, you've actually had the victory and submitted him as well. So, a lot of things do point towards Brandon Moreno and the momentum that he's gaining. But I like Davidson Figueretto here. I think people are just forgetting about how good this guy is. I know he didn't look great in the last performance, but I love the fact that he's made wholesale changes. Man, you look at the camp that he's with now out at Fight Ready, that social media pic that's making the rounds of him. I mean, that dude looking absolutely shredded a week out. I mean, it looks like incredible shape. Can't hurt to have, man. Look at all the great minds that are in that camp at Fight Ready that are going to be giving him advice and helping him to revamp and helping him to plan. So listen, I went with Davidson Figueretto as well in my staff picks. And hearing you guys kind of lean in that direction too, I feel a little bit better because I thought I was going to be a bit of an outlier. But this dude is a dangerous dude, and I think he's more focused now. I was watching his media day when he was just talking about focus and determination and getting his belt back, and that's all he's thinking about. And he's sacrificed everything, gotten away from his family, and he solely cares about one thing, and that is becoming a champion again. So we'll see what the demeanor is as fight week continues. I thought that was a little bit last time too, where he was trying to be this intimidating bruiser, and Moreno was just kind of laughing at him like, bro, you're not getting in my head. I think Figueretto's got to go away from that. The mind games aren't going to work, but the power in your fist can work. The aggressive in your grappling game can work. So if you get away from, let's see how cool my hair looks and make sure my suit and sunglasses are on point. Let me see if I can intimidate this guy. That's all out the window. Just go out there and fight the way you can fight, and I think you're still capable of beating this guy. And last thing I'll say, I bet Askar Askarov and Kaikar of France are really hoping for a Moreno victory as well. They don't want one more fight, a fourth fight between these guys, because they're waiting in the wings for the winner.
Can I say something John just made me think of? Being a professional fighter is a great way to have an excuse to get away from people that are driving you nuts. Because it just occurred to me, no one ever gets credit for saying, what adjustments have you made in this camp? Well, I'll tell you what I've done. I'm actually spending more time around friends and a whole lot more time around the family. I'm really getting involved in, a chores list at the house and, trying to, advance my relationship with my wife and PTA activities. You never hear that. It's always, I've isolated myself. I've cut myself off, my family. Man, that's if you don't like those people that much to begin with, man, consider becoming a pro fighter. Nobody blames you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, can you believe Mourinho is the big favorite? He's even a bigger favorite than Gon is over in Ngannou. Now, I get it. Some of the line is also the anticipated take expected by the bookies. And Marino's popular, especially here in North America. So it could be a little bit of that. It could be the fact that he just owned Figueretto in that second fight. The third fight. The second fight. But anyway, let me give you the odds here. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was going to be a little closer to maybe like, one guy's minus 110, the other guy's minus 120, or even a pick 'em. But Mourinho is I see him as high as minus 180 with Figueretto at plus 155. Man, that's kind of tempting there, to even splash a little bit more on the challenger, even after what we all said.
Yeah, I think the difference between the two, was if I were to tell you guys, hey, you guys know that guy Davidson Figueretto, I think you guys would say, oh yeah, he's great. But if I told you Brandon Moreno, I think you'd say, yeah, he's good. He's really good. I don't feel like Brandon Moreno is great yet. I think he showed us that he's super tough, but I don't know that he's great. And I think people, because of that popularity, are putting him up on that pedestal. And I mean, trust me, man, he's earned to be in the discussion. But the thing that he hasn't shown us yet, I think, is a little bit of consistency. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. But yeah, if you're a gambling person, you're probably salivating at these two fights.
Okay. John, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I think Goze kind of touched on there. When I look at the line, I think it's twofold, but I do think part of it is emotion. The guy's just so popular. We see that, right? I mean, in MMA lines, you still see emotion baked into lines, right? Because people just want to bet on their guy. They want to bet on the guy they like. And I think there's some of that. But you do have to factor in how good he looked in the last one. And I think it's easy for a fan to say, well, wait, I just saw that fight. I know exactly how it's going to go again. I think that's a little bit short-sighted, but, I think that's part of it there.
All right, let me jump in here real fast and just remind everybody. On Saturday, we're going to be doing a watch-along on MMA Junkie, and we're doing a post-fight show as well, hosted by John. So this goes towards all the patrons on the MMA Roadshow and all the patrons here on the Triple G Show with Richard Hunter. Don't forget, it's going to be a lot of fun. We really put a lot of work into this. So check it out. As far as I know, because I still haven't gotten the final, I guess, date and time for the pre-show, if we're going with that or not. But I know that Goze and I, our portion's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and then John immediately follows us. John, do you happen to know if we've locked in the pre-show yet?
Man, I almost feel bad saying because I don't want to give wrong information, but I believe it's at 5 p.m. Eastern because I believe the idea was, of course, Farah Nunes is going to be hosting that pre-show is to have an hour but go off air before the fight start. That way we're not asking you to not watch any of the prelims. If you're one of those hardcores that wants to watch every single fight, that we're off air before that first fight starts. So I believe that's the time. I really hope I'm not misspeaking because I don't want to give any wrong information, but I believe that's the time. And then, like you said, you guys will do the watch long, and I'll just jump on board as soon as I can afterwards and do the post show for the first time. So looking forward to it. First time.
Guys, I don't want to disrespect the rest of the card, but I thought that was a pretty big news story that came out, and I really want to get your guys' thoughts on it. We'll go with Richard on this one first. Amanda Nunes and Ida Nunes have left American Top Team. Amanda Nunes is going to, I guess, have her own spot now. I don't know if she's an entrepreneur and building her own gym or just joining another gym, but this is intriguing, and I wonder if at the core of this is Kayla Harrison or just her wanting to get a fresh look after losing one of her 2 titles. She's still the featherweight champion. What were your thoughts, Richard, without knowing all the facts yet of why this may have occurred? Have you heard anything?
I have not heard anything. Now, I don't think it's coincidental that this is happening in the wake of her last fight playing out the way that it did very recently. And we talked about it here on the show, John. I was troubled by her reaction to it. I mean, not just everybody can have a bad night. Look, no question, but just more of the kind of, and I'm talking about like in the post-fight interview, just the kind of, there you go, yeah, well, I'll see you guys, it'll all be good. See ya. I mean, it just kind of felt like oddly not concerning. And I get it that, nobody is maybe going to be completely candid and say, oh God, this is one of the most devastating, embarrassing moments of my career. I just shut down or whatever, but still there just didn't seem to be a lot of concern there. So in the wake of something like that, I'm sure somebody's getting blamed, whether it's, the fighter looking at the camp or the camp thinking that the fighter, checked out on that prep or that camp or whatever. So, and I'm just putting 2 and 2 together here. I just don't, if it's not coincidental, then it has to have something to do with that. Now, here's the thing. When a fighter is at this point in their career, they've established themselves as the best to have done it with their gender and their division, and they've made their money and all that kind of thing. And they go, okay, now I'm going to start my own thing. That's either great if you've got all your ducks in a row to do it, and you're maybe even going to create a legacy that'll go beyond your career. If you're going to, I don't know, have a training spot for future fighters, or it's a terrible idea because what it really is kind of a fancy way to go, I'm going to set up my own thing where nobody's criticizing me, maybe the way they were when I was under somebody else's roof. And I don't know which is which here. I know what history says. History says a lot of times it's the latter. I mean, I don't think, given what we know to be true about the history of the sport, and, this is a bit cynical here, but I don't think a lot of us look at it sort of like when we see fighters, open up side businesses. I mean, if they're just buying up real estate, great. But I think a lot of times when we hear about the latest barbershop or rap label, most of us probably go, and very few of us go, well, this is going to be a huge success. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that that's the best idea for her to be doing at this point. And I don't really know what's behind it. But I mean, they are in a unique situation. They're a couple that are active fighters, but a married couple and had both been successful. I don't know. I'm speculating off the top of my head here is what I'm doing, but I'm just going off of history and what I've seen. I don't think this is a good sign. How about that? If I had to sum it up into one phrase, I think something is amiss here.
John, how about, does this in any way resemble Rashad and John Jones? Now, obviously, Amanda's a GOAT, when it comes to women's MMA. And Rashad did win a title, so maybe it's not apples to apples comparing his career to Amanda's. But, again, both world champions. But just kind of like the veteran who did their thing, but now look at this new shiny toy who's graced the gym. And so now the other one maybe is just feeling like I'm no longer the big woman on campus, so I'm just going to slide out here. You think there's maybe a feel of that at all?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. And listen, I'm not 100% certain that Kayla Harrison is going to leave the PFL. Some people that I've talked to behind the scenes there say, look, they're breaking out the checkbook to keep her around. They're writing a couple extra zeros on there to keep her. And so, I think she may stay. But even if she does, if you look at it, Dan Lambert has done a great job to make sure that they were, never pitted as rivals. I've interviewed Kayla numerous times, and she always said, look, if we do ever fight, if me and Amanda do ever fight, it's going to be 100% respect. She said, look, it's not going to be Colby Jorge type situation, which played out right in that same very gym, right? She was always very respectful, said, look, she's the GOAT. I want to be the GOAT someday, and if that means I have to beat her, I will. But it was always very respectful, and I think, like I said, Dan Lambert went out of his way to foster a feeling of that they were both wanted, and I had heard that if he had his brothers, he was going to make sure they never fought each other because, he didn't want that exact same situation. So I don't think – I know, Richard, you said, you're just kind of, reading the tea leaves, so to speak, but I think you made a lot of really good points, and I think, as you said, her demeanor after the fight, it was almost like just accepting, I knew I wasn't 100% coming into this one, knew I hadn't done it. It was just like, oh, well, I did love her social media post that she posted afterwards. I actually pulled it up because I wanted to get the quote just right. And it was a picture with her on the belt. And she said, you guys think I'm going to go out on ballots? I undoubtedly accept the rematch. Give me a little time to get my shit together, and I will be back better than ever. And you're like, so you didn't have your shit together as the double champ? I mean, I think there's something going on there, and that does scare me a little bit. And we've seen it. As you said, history kind of tells. Maybe it's amazing. Maybe she starts this new, legacy in this new generation of fighting. She has her own team with her own philosophy that got her to a point, and she instills that in others, and she builds it. It could be that. But it always scares me when, what kind of team is she going to build around herself? Because when you're the best person in the room and you don't have people to push you, and I know when you're the GOAT, you're probably always the best person in the room, but when you're in a team as deep as American Top Team, I'm sure you have an off day every now and then where somebody just happens to be better that day. And you're going to have a difficult time, building any kind of team with that kind of depth. I know that she's got the financial resources. I know that she's got the reputation, but it scares me a little bit too. So I definitely think this is a story worth following. I definitely think there's more to the story. I mean, leaving American Top Team, the type of coaching staff they had there, the type of financial resources that they have, the commitment that Dan Lambert makes, the facility, something is going on here. And it does make you wonder, does she just not want to go through that grind anymore? Is it now she wants to cater it herself, just a certain way? And look, she's earned it. So maybe she can make it work. But as Richard said, I think rightfully so, history kind of shows that doesn't typically work out. So it's a very, very interesting story.
I wouldn't even leave American Top Team because I'd be afraid. This guy's like Oprah Winfrey, man. He's going to come in one day and go, hey, everybody, practice is over. Go outside. Everyone gets a Range Rover. He's rich. He does crazy stuff. But who knows? It's funny when we were talking about this, I was almost thinking Davidson, his submission to Brandon Mourinho is not – it was a version of what Amanda did to Juliana, except it wasn't a complete, meltdown, But you could just tell he quit. He knew he was getting his butt kicked. And, I don't know. I see a little bit of similarities, but not as stark a contrast as Amanda. She basically said, this isn't my night. That's it. I'm out of here. But anyway, how about you, Goze? What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, it's so hard to comment on it when we don't have all the facts, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's a little something. It's not really an ATT environment that they create. I think it's just when you have a lot of superstars together, people are going to butt heads, right? Colby and Masvidal, Lombard and Woodley. These things just kind of happen. But John's right. Anytime you hear individual interviews, they're always very respectful of each other. So I don't think it ever got to that. But Amanda Nunes needs to be focused on her rematch. And I think the best way of doing that is maybe tweaking things, not changing things. And this is a big change. Whether she's going to start something on her own, just starting your own business alone is stressful. In the middle of trying to get ready for a rematch and all these doubts and all that, that just seems like a lot. Maybe going to another spot. I don't know. But it's really hard to do.
I need some time to get my shit together. So let me start learning about dealing with landlords and building permits.
Right.
Yeah.
But this would have made more sense if we already had the news of where Kayla was going, and it was the UFC, you know, and it doesn't appear, like John said, I've heard the same stuff, that it seems like the PFL is more of the front runner. So again, why feel uncomfortable and leave the spot that took you to 13-1, that took you to the status of being the GOAT of women's MMA? You know, that coach that's like a father figure, she's always on the shoulders of Conan Silveira, you know, like will he still be able to be a part of her, you know, of her camp or not? You know, like kind of like what Jackson's doing. He's Jackson Wink over here, but he kind of dips out to guide John Jones at times. I don't know.
There just has to be something. I mean, just think about American top team. You're going to go, do you feel like you're not getting access to the coaching you need, or like what? I mean, they look at who they have available. And are you, dude, if she went to Dan Lambert and said, you know why we lost? Because we don't have that striking coach over there. That striking coach would be the one that would make, I guarantee you he would go hire that striking coach. You know what I mean? So there has to be something behind these. I don't think it's Kayla Harrison. I could be wrong. I don't think it's Kayla Harrison. But there has to be something, because you literally have access to everything you need at American Top Team. There's got to be more to this.
Yeah, well, we'll see what we can find out in the coming weeks. We'll leave it here for now. John, thanks for popping in, man. It was fun to do MMA Avengers again with you. And obviously, to your audience, you know, check us out. We're the Triple G Show with Richard Hunter. And don't forget that we have that watch along on Saturday, UFC 270 over on MMA Junkie. We all combine forces. Goze and I will host the watch along at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then approximately, or right after, I should say, the main event's over. So approximately 1 a.m., we'll hand it over to John for a post-fight. First time doing that. We're really, really anxious to do it. All right, John. Thanks again, man, for hanging out with us here. And we'll see you again soon.
Love it, man. We got to do this more often.
All right, so there you go. That was our conversation. Gorgeous George, Goze, Richard Hunter. I really appreciate them doing this with me and allowing us to collaborate on this one a little bit. And like I said, I think we're going to try to do a little bit more stuff moving forward, man. It's like I said, I really used to love doing MMA Junkie Radio, man. It used to be a daily show when we go down to Mandalay, and they just don't have that ability anymore with the way the things that they have to wear a mask. And I mean, obviously, wearing a mask isn't exactly conducive to doing a radio show. So hopefully the rules will change here in Las Vegas over the next couple months. Maybe they can get back down to Mandalay. But they're still doing a great job from their home studio. But, man, their home studio is like 5 minutes from my house. So there's just no reason we can't be doing some more stuff together. I really always enjoy those guys and their insight. And, of course, Richard Hunter as well, longtime friend and knowledgeable guy as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Give it a little something different. Thanks to cold coffee. Listen, George said, hey, don't mean to downplay the rest of the card. We won't break down all of it, but I will say there, while I get it, especially with this new price, man, I know, like I said, I can't. It's hard for me to get into discussions about price because I don't have to pay it. I mean, it's just that simple. It's on a company card. Like, I don't even have to be out of pocket and wait to get reimbursed. So. I always feel a little bit guilty when I'm like, I'd pay, I mean, I can't, if it was really coming out of my pocket, maybe I would sit this one out. I certainly wouldn't go to the bar and watch. I always hear people like, well, if you don't want to buy it, just go to like Buffalo Wild Wings and watch it. You know how much frosty beverages would be consumed in 3 hours of watching fights? I would be well more than $74.99 into into my bill at that point. So that never seems like a real option to me. I suppose you could just sit there and drink water, but then the servers really, really, really wouldn't like you. Listen, I will be working obviously for this. We'll have the post show, but I get it for some people that might not want to pay $75 for this. Maybe those 2 title fights aren't enough, and there is the very real possibility that Cyril Gane, if Cyril Gane is victorious, it's because he's fighting a very patient, tactical battle, and that doesn't necessarily, lend itself to excitement. Now, if Francis Ngannou wins, it's because somebody just got clipped upside their head, with a highlight reel knockout. So, if Francis wins, I think you can guarantee there was some excitement. And, I agree that I just don't see any way Moreno and Figueretto isn't an exciting fight. But I get it. Maybe some people don't like flyweight. So, I do like the main card here. I mean, Andre Fiallo, Michel Pereira. I mean, Michel Pereira, obviously showman extraordinaire, a lot of fun. Andre Fiallo, very skilled fighter, very talented fighter that a lot of people are very high on. And he's stepping in difficult scenario here, but a lot of people believe he's got some upside in the future. I did take Michel Pereira here in my staff pick, so we'll see how that plays out. Again, I don't mean to downplay the skills of Andre, but this is a tough ask for him off the top for sure. Said Nurmagomedov versus Cody Stamann. This could be a great fight as well. I did go with Said Nurmagomedov here for my staff picks. I think Said is knocking on the door. I think a victory here, and he's probably in the rankings. I mean, I would think so. He's got to be close to there, right? The guy's got an impressive record, and this would be a decent win for him. Of course, Cody Stamann, a nice name, but it's a big platform as well. He did have the loss to Tyrone Barcelos earlier in his career, but a very talented individual to say the least. I think right on the cusp of being ranked with a victory. I guess you kind of got impressed a little bit. You got to see the performance. If maybe it's boring or he just edges out a split decision or something like that, then maybe he doesn't. But right now, if you look at the official UFC rankings, Rafael Sunsal at number 15 is just barely kind of hanging on there. I would think 4 losses, granted all very, very high profile losses, but 4 losses. So you got to think that Said would probably be able to. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking for my own ballot, but I would think that he'd probably be a candidate there. Wellington Turman versus Rodolfo Vieira. I did take Rodolfo Vieira here. I know, Rodolfo Vieira's probably got some detractors after the one loss when he certainly ran out of energy. But I think he's still very talented as well. I think the one that most people are probably going to be looking forward to the most on the prelims has to be Charles. Actually, I want to say it the French Canadian. It's not Charles Jourdain, right? It's Charles Jourdain. I can't say it. Charles Jourdain, all right? That's not how you really say it, but I can't get the French Canadian in there. See, this is why I need Cole Coffee to come in with his foreign linguistic expertise that he has and pronounce it properly against Ilia Topuria. Respect to Charles for stepping in here on short notice against a very, very talented individual. I think Ilia Topuria is the real deal. A lot of people incredibly high on him, and I'm one of them. I think he's a massive favorite here, biggest one on the card at minus 630 with the odds that I'm looking at, meaning you have to put down $630 just to win 100 on Ilia Topuria. I would not recommend doing that as confident as I am in him. Man, you start getting odds like that, anything can happen in MMA. And so I just think you always have to be wary of that. You start getting up to minus 600, that's too much. But I do believe Ilia Topuria is the real deal. And this could be an opportunity for him to kind of showcase things a little bit as well. I mentioned before Raoni Barcelos versus Victor Henry. I'm really high on Raoni Barcelos as well. Victor Henry, a veteran around the game, can put on a show. So we'll see if he can come in here and maybe upset. But Raoni Barcelos, I think, is incredibly talented. Trevin Giles is in there, always exciting against an undefeated. Handful of newcomers here, some undefeated ones too. You got Michael Morales coming in here at 12-0. Pete Rodriguez at 4-0, a little early, right? Pete Rodriguez stepping in against Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, good for Pete Rodriguez. Certainly, I always say that. I feel like guys should get a little bit more, a little bit more seasoning. Get a little. It's easy to say that when you're, making $1,000 or whatever. You want to get in the UFC, which I understand people think they should make more, but it's certainly a higher pay scale than the regional scene, to say the least. So that's your ESPN prelims. You get down to ESPN Plus, Tony Gravely versus Simon Oliveira, Vanessa Demopoulos, Silvana Gomez-Juarez, Matt Frivola versus the undefeated Genaro Valdez, and Kay Hansen versus CFFC's own Jasmine Jasudavicius. Tough matchup there. Kay Hansen. Kay Hansen's tough. So, I get it. If you don't have the budget right now for the 75, I can understand why people might object to this one a little bit with that new price, especially. But I love those two fights up at the top, and I'll certainly be watching. Again, we touched on it, but I'll just remind you one more time, if you can check it out. We've got the pre-show with Farah Hanoun. I really wish I knew the time. I'm pretty sure it's 2 p.m. Eastern. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, 5 p.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. Pacific. Sorry about that. 5 p.m. Eastern. So 1 hour before the prelim card starts, I believe is the plan. Hopefully that's right. We'll have it all set up on MMA Junkie, so you can check it out right there on the website. And then, of course, the watch along with the radio boys, and then that'll just transition. From what I understand, I think the way we decided to set it up is, it'll actually be the same stream as the watch along. We'll just continue on. They'll just kind of back out of the broadcast studio and bring me in. So all being done remotely, of course. So you won't even have to switch streams if you're watching there. So if you just want to do the watch along, which I'll be honest, I've never done, but they say they have a lot of fun. I'm usually working. I'm at the event, so I've never actually partaken in the watch along, but I know they enjoy the heck out of it, and our sponsoring partners that work with us on doing it, seem to like the content. So if you haven't done it, maybe this is the one where you're like, I don't want to spend the $75, but I'll hang out with these guys and they can tell me what's going on. I can read the play-by-play or whatever and chat some MMA. So I guess that's an option. And then, at some point, we'll check in with Cold Coffee again. Maybe he'll be here next week. I mean, we're in Las Vegas. Maybe he'll be here next week, or maybe he won't. You never know with Cold Coffee. He might just say, now I can't find my recording equipment around the house. I can't even do that. Oh, man. Give him some grief for this one. Give him some grief for this. He left us high and dry. By the way, next week, I will be doing a CFFC show. So there is no UFC event. But if you're still looking for some MMA next weekend, I'll just go ahead and preview it out there that I will be doing a CFFC event out in Philadelphia. So we'll break down all the details on that next week. Well, as always, hey, hope you enjoyed the break. There's no more breaks anymore. It's going fast and furious. Wouldn't have it any other way. Would like to do it with my man Cold Coffee, but he shafted me, and I'm feeling hurt. I'm going to let him know about it. He's getting a cold conversation. But for everybody else, hope you like the little spin up. Hope you like the little change up. Hopefully you support those guys over the Triple G show. And obviously, of course, thanks for listening.